I'm Stefan Mahailu, the host of the Joe from Texas podcast, joined by two incredibly distinguished guests. Both are America First patriots, hardcore conservatives, those who put service over self, living the arc of the American dream, built businesses from scratch, and their shared mission is just making America the best place we can for our children, grandchildren, and great grandchildren. Of course, Joe from Texas, you need no introduction, and neither does our incredible guest here, Vivek Ramaswamy. Let's get right to the discussion because it's about reducing the $34 trillion national debt. Joe, you're incredibly passionate about it. Vivek, from your perspective, how important is it for politicians, both sides of the aisle, to get the hard work done to reduce the $34 trillion national debt?
It's vital. I think that if the interest payments on our national debt become the largest line item in our federal budget, we're done. We're toast. We're in quicksand because at that point, you really have the largest line item of your entire budget going to pay down interest payments. It's a downward spiral from there, which means we're not working with a lot of time here. The flip side is I think there are some simple steps we could take to buy down significant chunks of that national debt. And the more we buy down the national debt, the more actually you see the shrinkage of the interest rates that we can expect to pay as well. And so there's a virtuous cycle in the other direction. But I do think now is our wake-up call of a moment to say, you know what, both parties have been guilty in this. That's all right. It's going to take action from both parties. I think Republicans can and should lead the way, but it's going to take action from all Americans to say that we're going to fight our way out of something where we're spending money on things that don't even advance our own interests. Let's use this as an occasion not only to fight our national debt, but to grow our economy and to revive how we run our country in ways we should have been doing anyway, even if we didn't have a debt problem. So that's the opportunity that I see.
And Joe, why is it so important to sit and have this discussion with, again, one of the nation's leading voices, the America First voices in Vivek Ramaswamy, to say, yes, this is a serious problem. We need to reduce the national debt.
Well, first of all, the national debt, like you say, has just grown completely out of control. Will be $36 trillion when Joe Biden finishes his first and only term. God, please help us with that. You know, I remember in 1992 when Ross Perot ran. Now, Ross Perot, there was $4 trillion in debt at that time is where the government was. And he thought that was unsustainable. You know, and he came out of his safety net, which was his business, as a businessman, funded his own campaign. I don't think he really wanted to be president of the United States, but in order to really raise the awareness of where the debt was, he got into a race where both those gentlemen that he ran against were both capable of being president of the United States. Obviously, one was president, one became president. And then he ran again in 96. And then Newt Gingrich and a group of came together and had a contract with America. If they got back in and won the House, they would do some things and get some things voted on and get this country back on track. What was the result? They had 4 years where they balanced the budget. They paid it down twice. And as you referenced a while ago, both sides, I'm glad you said that, it's a bipartisan problem.
Oh, yeah.
12 years Republican, 12 years Democrat. We've had it split right down the middle. And even every one of our presidents that's come in, I don't think the debt's really that important. You know, there's a whole lot of, this country has a lot of problems, as you know, and you referenced some a while ago. But if we can't pay our bills as a businessman, as a country, as a nation, we can't, the rest of these things are going to take us over anyway. And we're on that spiral, like you say. I don't know when we run over the cliff or when we run up against the wall, but we're getting close. And the CBO has already said $2 trillion a year for the next 10 years that we're going to go in the hole. That's $56 trillion. And I think by your math, that's going to be about $2 trillion a year in interest. That's totally a disaster for our country. We're the superpower. We're the world leader. We cannot fail financially. If we do, then we're going to lose that status. And the only way we can keep the strong military is have a strong economy, and that's slipping away.
And Vivek, you mentioned on the campaign trail a lot of times that we can't cut our way to prosperity. That's not the answer. And it was so interesting on the campaign trail when you talked about the fact that politicians talk about cuts. And from your perspective, America doesn't have to. We can make smart investments and grow to reduce the $34 trillion national debt.
I would say that we need cuts regardless of the national debt problem. I think we need to fire 75% of the bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. just to revive the essence of a three-branch constitutional republic. A lot of that money that they then budget and spend is itself wasted on, think about the things that leave people even worse off. Paying people more money to stay at home instead of to go to work. Yes, that adds to our national debt, but it also shrinks the economy. It also even contributes to a mental health epidemic of the loss of self-worth and meaning in our country that's leaving people worse off, irrespective of the economics, which is itself is irrespective of the national debt. So I think the way I look at that is the cuts that we need to make to government excess should be made independent of the national debt, which is just another symptom of that deeper problem. However, when it comes to fighting our national debt, we need to be ambitious also in growing our way out of some of those problems. It's drill, frack, burn coal, embrace nuclear energy, get our American energy resources out from underneath the ground, sell it, use that to buy down a good portion of our national debt as well. You can think about people who are letting into this country legally or otherwise. That could be a fundraising mechanism too, to be able to say that, you know what, if every one of the 10 million people if we had even just charged them, I'm not saying it's right for them to cross the border at all. Of course, it's wrong. And I think anybody's in this country illegally should be deported. But even if you did the math, that each of those people would have to pay $100,000 to enter this country, or at least even have to earn it to be able to pay that back. Their next $100,000 of earnings would go back to this country. That's $1 trillion right there. And it would actually help solve and mitigate a different catastrophe that we have. So whatever it is, that's just a good way of thinking about it. Get the energy out from underneath our ground. Stop shelling out foreign aid to countries whose national debt per person is less than ours. Think about this for a second. Most of the foreign aid that we're providing to other countries, it goes to countries whose national debt per person is less than ours. So every person in this country, young people included, especially young people, because it falls on their head in the next generation, you could argue is about $200,000 of debt on their shoulders they didn't sign up for. Well, now we're taking our own funds and giving it to another country that has far less debt per person, and yet we're the ones transferring money over there. So these are simple steps we should take before we get to, the only place people like to go to cut Social Security, cut Medicare. Those are difficult bridges to cross because those are promises that have been made to people who have already paid into a system. Without touching that, looking at pro-growth mechanisms, getting energy out of the ground, stop paying people to impede economic growth, paying people more money to do what's bad for them than what's right for them. Single mothers, more money not to have a married man in the house than to have a married man in the house. Young people and old people alike, not to go to work instead of to go to work. Those are simpler measures we can take now to grow the economy, to stand for our principles, and fight the national debt in the process. And so that's how I look at it.
And Joe, correct me if I'm wrong, you're from Texas, big on drill, baby, drill here at home. I mean, can we not reduce the national debt by investing in things like drilling here at home, not investing in foreign countries and keeping that money right here in America?
Sure. We are the manufacturing mega of the world, no doubt. When we come out of World War II, we were the absolute superpower, manufacturing and everything. We have taught a lot of these other countries how to drill and do a lot of the things they're doing today. But for us to take the back seat and let them do it and farm out, when you farm out your oil, your energy, that's how you run your national security. I mean, you might want to buy TVs or something else from a foreign country, but oil, that's how you power your military. And for us to quit drilling in this country, something we've done for 150 years, that has led this country. Those are hundreds of thousands of good paying jobs, and we need to do it here. I worked in 1982 on the Department of Energy storage called Big Hill. Our current president, sold oil out of there to drop the price of fuel before the midterm election. Anybody that was awake seen what that was all about. Now, we pulled that down, and I don't know when we'll ever put that back. That's your national security. It's one thing to, like I say, to farm out some manufacturing, but look, we import about $4 trillion worth of goods a year. What if we did, like Vivek said, we took $1 more trillion of that and made it here? That payroll turns over 7 times in the local economy. That would be huge for this.
Better for our debt, better for our country, better for economic growth, better for our national self-confidence.
Absolutely. Put people back to work in this country. But, we have let too many people get dependent on staying at home. Now, obviously, this pandemic created a lot of that. But, the second round of stimulus should have never happened anyway. And a lot of people question, did we pay out too much the first time? We want to give money away to be favorable to get votes. That's the wrong way you do it. You earn it. You earn your way like you did and I did and like millions of other Americans did too. And, when you talk about the border, from 1892 to 1954, Ellis Island, 20 million people came to this country. This country welcomes immigrants in the right way. Your family knows that, okay? And there's nothing wrong with that. 38%.
If you do it the right way.
If you do it the right way. 38% of 338 million people today have ties back to Ellis Island. There's nothing wrong with that if you do it right. We're just opening the border. You know, what one administration is doing well, the next one gets in, just changes it, just because it's not his or her idea. We need to quit that. We need to put that aside. We need to do what's good for America, no matter when you get elected president on down the road, and it's going to happen. I hope and pray that you stay exactly like you are today, and I know you will. You'll be true to the American people. If there's a good policy in place, leave it alone.
We don't pledge allegiance to a party. We pledge allegiance to the country.
You add your good policy to it. That's what you do, and you advance the country that way. You don't take 2 steps back. You stay forward.
Amen. And I think that's the irony of the moment that we're in is each step that we take in doing in the short run what might be advantageous to a given political goal is for the long run something that we're adding to the actual national debt, but also even the debt of identity that we suffer in this country too. We've lost our sense of who we are. And the way I look at that $34 trillion national debt number and growing is it's just a symptom of a deeper loss of who we are as Americans. If we do the things that reflect who we are as a people, have a nation with borders, have a nation that embraces economic growth, that embraces merit and meritocracy and the rule of law in this country and hard work rather than disincentivizing it, automatically our national debt problem gets smaller. So in some ways, I'm very serious about addressing the national debt problem, but I think the way we do it isn't just by trying to play whack-a-mole on the dollars in the budget. It's by actually going to the foundational ideals of who we are, revive that. And if we do that one step at a time and advancing the pillars of American exceptionalism without even thinking about the debt, what we'll notice is those policies will automatically cause that national debt problem to melt away. And so that's, I think, what we're missing in this country. That's what we need to revive. And it's not as you said, it's not a Republican point or a Democratic point. It's an American point. And I think that the more we're willing, people like you are willing to stand up for that, the American dream that you've lived, you know it exists because you've lived it. I know it the same way. The more we're able to speak our minds freely about it, the more we're able to expose this problem to the rest of the country, not filtered through what they're force-fed by politicians who tell them what they want to hear and tell them the truth. And I think that the more you're willing to do that, the more of an impact you're going to have. And I'm grateful you're staying on the mission.
Well, I appreciate you letting me come here and visit with you today. This is going to give Joe from Texas a kick. I was telling Stefan, you're the bear, I'm the cub.
Come on.
If you let me follow you around just a little bit and just pick up a little bit of the press, we'll do some good. But I tell you, my dad had a bad stroke in 1957. 2 weeks later, we literally didn't have enough to eat. He was an alcoholic. He drank up everything he made besides that. Mama brought him home. He wasn't supposed to live, but he did. My younger brother had open heart surgery the same week. Now think about that 65 years ago. Your wife is a wonderful surgeon, does a lot of good for lots of people. And technology has moved us way ahead. Okay, so those were some trying times. We lived off of the good, I guess, the good graces of God. Obviously, the churches brought us food. The local grocery store helped us out and gave us stuff. We were literally starving to death. But we had a little bit of pension income because my dad was in World War II. If we hadn't had that and then he died shortly after we got the disability pension, if we hadn't got that, Social Security is going to run out in less than 10 years. I mean, that is a horrible situation for 68 million Americans to be worried about. You know, they're scared about that. All they hear is that we can't pay our bills. You know, the government's going to shut down. We need to quit scaring American people. We need to do what's right as politicians. We need to balance our budget. We need to work together. We need to do it on time and quit scaring the American people.
Just like you did in your family life and just like you did it with your business.
That's exactly it. Get out there and make it happen. And we can work ourselves out of this. And I applaud you for what you said earlier. It's not just stop spending over here. We need to do all the above. Like we're talking about energy, do it all. Coal, frack, natural gas.
And don't apologize for it.
Yeah, and don't apologize for it. That's what we do.
Yeah.
And we need to do that in government. We need to stop the fraud. We need to stop the waste and the abuse. And we need to shrink government. It's way too big. Government's grown way too big. It's promised too much, subsidizes too many, and we have to do something before it's too late. And that's what I'm on. I'm on a mission to try to get people, because when I crisscross America, people say, Joe, my vote's not going to count. Well, one vote does add up, but if you really sit and think about it, it's kind of mind-boggling. What's my vote going to do? I want 4 or 5 million people to look at this contract like Newt Gingrich had. This is a contract from the American people. We have 10 things on it. It's a work in progress, and it's got about 8 things on it that President Trump has right now. He has 15. I've got 8 of them that correlate with it.
It's similar vision.
It's similar, okay? But what we have to do is, if I can get a following that say, you know what, if I can get an audience with the next president, potential president, say in October, say, look, we got 5 million people that say, if you'll get this like Newt Gingrich did, get it voted on. You don't have to get it passed. We're not asking that. But make sure this is on the agenda when you first get in office. I know you got some other things you want to do. And maybe we can convince 4 or 5 million people that are undecided, that have not voted for you last time, where they had some bad taste in their mouth or whatever made them go the wrong way. We need to cleanse that and get them back home, get them back in the fold, so we can win the White House back.
Well, Joe, I'll tell you, I applaud your spirit and your self-starting spirit. You've done that in the world of business, but now you're doing that in the world of, in a bottom-up way, changing this country. And so, I thank both you guys for making the visit. Thanks for joining me at home. And you know what? It's going to take patriots like you that revive this country. So I'm cheering for you at every step of the way.
Well, I really appreciate your hospitality.
Thank you.
God bless.
Thank you all.